Hello and welcome back to the Redhedge Podcast. Today is a special episode. I'm actually here with the main partner of Redhedge Asset Management, with myself, Stefano Giorgetti, and I'm not the one asking the question today. We are asking each other questions. We're gonna take this occasion to get you to know us a bit more, or to know us at all. And thank you very much, Stefano, to coming up in London to do this.
It's a big pleasure, actually being hosted. And this podcast, the setup of itself, make me realize how far we've come from the beginning. So at times we often say to each other, we should at times stop and look what has been achieved and what has been done up so far, because obviously you are so busy every day, running. But small details like this one, like the podcast in itself, really brings the memory back into the maybe former days of different offices, different environments.
Pen and paper and a lot of goodwill.
And a lot of hope and goodwill and energy from our younger selves. But I think it would have been nice to time travel back and see if those two younger version of ourselves could have had a peek to the present situation and say, okay, that's not too bad.
I agree.
From the start.
Sometimes I tell to myself, would you do it again? The answer is no. But not because I feel we achieved or arrived to the point where it's okay or we grow Redhedge as I wanted to grow Redhedge. Yeah. No, it's just about the pain that we took in the last 10 years to arrive to this point. And obviously there is a lot of energy and a lot of anger to succeed in this for the following many years. But the starting from zero bit is what I feel like is done and dusted, and I wouldn't redo this in any form in the future. For me personally, I don't know about you. What do you think?
I completely agree, because I also know, having also a background in neuroscience as well, which maybe is something I can start to introduce little elements of this mysterious figure who is co-partnering Redhedge, is that I know for a fact that memory tends to eliminate the bad bits and try to highlight the good bits. It's a kind of an adaptive strategy of our own psyche. So the pain you remember, it's actually a fraction of the pain you have kind of sustained in these 7 years to get to this point. And actually, just to slide in also an industry maybe topic, is that we often say to each other, and I consider this to be very true, that the bar, so the difficulty to get the same setup, the same structure, as bureaucracies became more complex and way more stringent, has higher significantly. So not only would be the same pain, which would be more than you remember, but would be also the fact that from an industry point of view, it's harder to get the same setup, to say the same running, the same operations up to speed. It's going to be harder if you do it today for the n amount of years, as we know.
The entry barrier is much
and I think it's getting harder and harder for emerging managers. I kind of, in Spanish we'll say lo siento, I kind of feel it. I'm sympathetic to emerging or wannabe bootstrapped bottom-up managers, because I know the bar is so much higher.
I think starting with little, as we did, with very little, and grow organically is close to being impossible. I mean, it
very
takes
tough.
so much,
Very tough.
So the emerging managers to have an angel which is big shoulder to start bigger, and that is the key difference, I think, between the two approaches.
It's funny to think about if developing Redhedge was a video game. I think it's interesting because you will have the 100 million AUM mark, big boss battle, which makes or break it. It's going to be definitely one of the milestones in the video game. And now it's going to be one of those video games where you die most of the time and you give up unless you're very stubborn. Exactly. You stop playing. So yeah, it's just for very dedicated professionals. But when we did it, it's more like a difficulty mode of a Super Mario game where, yes, you die a lot, but you know that you can do it. And you push hard enough. But now I think it's going to be more of a different one. So
for the public and for the audience more than public, we how do we divide? I am the CEO and CIO, but mostly look at about on the investment strategy. I look at the day-by-day investment and everything that is about business developing maintaining and retaining and finding new investors. Stefano looks at everything else basically. He's the CEO and CFO of the company, so he's all about all the operational infrastructure. As you have noticed, is paying into the paperwork in almost to get it done, the directorships of the funds and all the bureaucracy behind the scenes, which is becoming more and more painful these years.
To make an analogy into soccer at this time, back in the days, for the one who are fans, there was a role which doesn't exist anymore, which was libero, and it was basically the guy who play in front of the defense, which will go wherever there is a problem. So it was a sort of free agent, if you will, to go wherever there is acute pain and need, and he will go there first, or wherever there is more risk, operationally speaking. And I felt this is a bit as my role has evolved. Because talking a bit about my background, I did come from a cognitive science background academically. Then I studied economics and marketing with some finance elements. But then I really developed the skills and the knowledge through a short experience in UBS Wealth Management in London, and then to Redhedge when I was already certainly not a seasoned professional. So I grew in terms of knowledge and expertise with Redhedge. And basically, I gravitated towards operations more and more. And it gave me the opportunity to understand all the elements and how complex the mosaic of the operations and everything that is behind the curtains. I speak about, in my mind, I imagine it as a behind the curtains, so people don't understand the trading and say, okay, I'm buying and selling, I'm trying to make a profit. But I think most people will be mind blown of the complexity after you execute a trade of everything that stands behind it. That to me is behind the curtains, which I got to learn and skills I got to develop. And as you mentioned, I got to cover many hats and many positions. And it's interesting to know the intricacies that are proper to any company, but especially a regulated company. So as you mentioned, regulation and directorship of the funds, which allow to see one side, let's say, of the coin, where you are the investment manager providing the strategy, and the other side, the fund itself and its regulation. Our funds are in Ireland, so in this case, the regulator is the Central Bank of Ireland, and all the set of challenges that are there, because the regulator themselves have a continuous conundrum, as you have a continuous rebus of how do I make my strategy market neutral and profitable, which is an everyday rebus. The regulator themselves have big rebuses of like, okay, where the industry is going, this is now a thing. It's impactful in terms of national GDP even, but also I have underlying risk I want to avoid, and how do I structure this? And you see this with letters regulation where they put the focus. Obviously, ESG has been one of the waves which have taken the industry and impacted a lot. And we get to experience this as long. So we have the market dynamics, and then we have sort of the regulatory dynamics and everything that comes with it, which is an additional set of challenge. So we can say with confidence, there is no space for boredom at Redhedge.
No, absolutely. And I guess in any dynamic company growing, but even static, if you wish, is just because the world around you is so dynamic, especially in this industry, as you said. You cannot stay still and relax, sit back and enjoy what you said at the beginning. We repeat ourselves that we should stop. We never do, but we should stop for 1 minute and look back on what has been achieved. Yeah. And it's not just the classic parameters of growth in revenues, IOM and geographic exposure. It's all about the little wins within the infrastructure, the little tiny details that means big differences in the long term internally, which I think to change subject, just to describe ourselves, I always joke that we always play the bad cop, good cop. And I try to have a stronger personality. I get inflamed almost frequently, and Stefano is very patient. Stefano is the one that calms me down all the time. He's my day-by-day psychologist, therapist almost, that helps me see things from a different perspective, calm down and take more relaxed decision for sure. And but when there is the bad cop to be played, it stimulates me to be the bad cop, and sometimes ask you to do the same for once. When I really want to pass a message to someone. Stefano, you have to go there and be tough. So if you're tough, it's not me, and they will understand that.
And no, it's a very good point. And on one side, I think there must be a Robin to a Batman always, at times an Alfred to a Batman. And the other side is that this dynamic works very well. And one of the things I'm most proud and thankful for is the culture. Because in the end of the day, the intrinsic value of the company, I think it reverts back all the time to the people and to the culture and the environment you build around it. And so the funding principles, because yes, you have similar goals and the industry is polarized towards certain objectives, but the way you go about them, it makes all the difference to me and creates the DNA of a company. And I think this dynamic works very well because one of the greatest achievements or things I'm very thankful for is that I think in time we learn from each other. So we complement each other very well, but also we learn from each other because at times you're like, okay, Stefano, how can you be so calm? There is such a big problem and I cannot even sleep at night. And on the other side, say, okay, how Andrea finds the energy to do the podcast on top of everything else, to me is mind-blowing because I will be already at 13 feet underground by now in terms of stress and everything. But I think we learn from each other because we cross-contaminate in our way of doing things. And mostly, I think we manage to bring balance. So the resulting vector, so to speak, in an engineering way, might have a 90 degrees angle in certain characteristics, but then the resulting vector is well balanced. And I think people can find their own space and map themselves against what are the fundamental principles. One of the things I really like about Redhedge is that we want things done well. So we experiment them first, and it's a bit inadvertently almost, so indirectly has become one of our distinctive factors, is that we started Redhedge under different premises than the strictly entrepreneurial ones. So rather than say how we make or how we have the best opportunity to make money out of the investment management business, we said, okay, how do we create something we are happy about as investors, so as first users, and then we try to expand and see if there is a fit for external people, for external investors to do so. And this somehow triggered from the beginning a dynamic which I think is uncommon in the industry, because then we placed ourselves in a strategy that has a higher fixed up cost, so a higher risk in a way, and burden, and a limited capacity because the scalability of the strategy is high, but it's not infinite. So it's not an obvious starting point or dynamic for an entrepreneurial adventure if you look at it from a pen and paper exercise. But this actually created what is unique about Redhedge, which we have focused on quality and robustness first, and we are always the first user and the most critical about our company, our processes. We are asking and demanding the most. And this then helps us in turn, not maybe on speed. Maybe there have been companies that have grown faster in 7 years or so. But I really like the output in terms of quality and robustness and the fact that we have a platform and a robust basis on which we can build upon, as we are here for the longer game, so or the long run. So I think the beauty of it is that, again, it reverts back on our personal attitude towards company, but towards life in general, because obviously it's not even thinkable. It's slightly unthinkable the amount of things you do, imagining your work is your life. It's completely unthinkable that you will have a life which is completely separate from your work. This is the core of your life revolves for long part on Redhedge. And it's nice when principles shine through. I think this is what is also common on big enterprises. I think when Apple was not Apple back in the days, I think it was allowed to become Apple, not only on the back of a genius and strong personality as Steve Jobs was, but also on the principle. There were many moments in which he could have compromised for something that would look more logical or easy or convenient, cut corners. But he almost got fired and got up with nothing. He got fired twice, but he almost ended up with nothing on the basis of sticking to the principles. So I really like to see on our smaller scale and degree how we can translate principle in everyday decisions, which were maybe not conventional or obvious at the time.
This is one of the big, when I'm out there telling our story to potential investors, we've been criticized for slowness. This is the biggest, comment I receive. How comes that, officially 10 years, practically 8 of certified track record, why did you grow so slowly? And I take pride on this point, because it's exactly what you describe. Testing the infrastructure, not being entrepreneurial in that way. Like, the idea is we're doing it for us in a way that we will be extremely satisfied in what the satisfaction in having a very strong infrastructure that we didn't find a way, and scaling at some point this strong infrastructure will never be perfect. Nothing is perfect in life, but at some point, like now, where we're confident that we're stable and we've been testing, and we want to bring into the next level, then is where we push to do that. But the beauty of us, I think, which if we don't succeed, is still a success. It's not about the classic parameters of entrepreneurship, where you need to hit certain growth per year on year, and you need to, if you want to be in this game, you have to be this. For us, it's all organic. Of course, we invest to grow, and we will invest more and more, but it's not a big deal if we don't. As long as the principles that we stick with, we're doing whatever we want to do in the way that we want to do, as we think is the best. We listen to the market, we collect feedbacks, we listen to the people that we partner with. But in the end, it's our principle expressed in a strategy, which is ourselves in a way, the conservativeness, the risk aversion, the educated risk appetite, and we translate it in an infrastructure. And here goes my question would be, and I know my answer, but what was the most challenging thing to create Redhedge? What for you was the most challenging aspect of the, if you have to pick one? There was a lot of challenges always, but what is the one that you suffered most? It was particularly important and relevant for you in those years. What was the biggest challenge, basically?
That's a very good question. Therefore, I'm pausing a little bit to give
I
a
tell you
proper
mine,
and
then.
search the answer.
Mine, which I was never properly exposed, was manage people in the beginning, because it links to the point that we just made. The culture and the principles of a firm, when it's a small firm, has to be with every single person working with the firm or in the firm. And obviously, you have an interview, you can do 5, 10, 25 interviews. You never get to know someone, and the way, someone is trying to sell you something, which themselves to have a job. It's very difficult to understand a personality on the back of interviews. And we have been struggling, especially in the very beginning, to find the right people, just based on the fact that most of them didn't click with the principles of the company itself. And I think I was more surprised about some of those factors than the classic market challenges, fundraising challenges, or mistakes that we have made. The managing people was surprisingly difficult, and I don't know how bigger company can have a good infrastructure which reflects. I guess middle management is the key to grow eventually to those levels, but it's very, very challenging, way more than I will ever expect.
No, absolutely. And basically, I had a similar thing. I mean, I agree that people being the key, but also being that very complex object, or actually not object, but life being that they are multidimensional, they are the most complex thing to manage and integrate, and how critical it is for a small firm to have the right elements, because the culture can go south very quickly, or just the environment, the happiness, the excitement to go to work can go south very quickly if there is even one person that doesn't fit with the team. But I was maybe not blindsided by this, because somehow I was maybe more aware, or I already understood it or imagined. The thing which I was generally surprised, that took me by surprise, is a different dynamic, which is in finance, maybe because our background it's in Italy, and financial culture in Italy is notoriously not very strong. So the disjoint that I got to experience, which got me very surprised, is that I thought, okay, you have a quality product, it should be evident, it should be self-evident why it is good. And being self-evident why it is good, people should be drawn to it and invest in it, and therefore you should have a linear, let's say, IUM raising correlated very strongly with how the quality of the product. Whether instead the reality of the industry, at least in countries like Italy, but I would say almost everywhere, and this applies to other industries as well, is that the distribution channel and everything that pertains to marketing, to distribution, is so important that almost trumps the quality of the product itself. And this is a dynamic which I knew that existed, but I couldn't realize how strong it is. And so I suffered the fact that it doesn't matter how qualitative or what's the quality of what you're offering. If you don't play the distribution and marketing game well, you're going to be undercut no matter what. So you're going to stay the hidden talent that nobody cares about, and maybe just the aficionado, the very talented, and they can go through the numbers, say, wow, this is a lot of quality, shake of hands, but you don't grow as a company.
There is a mix. I was more prepared on this because, I mean, for sure, we never invested enough
exactly.
in that sense that we knew already. And now we are more on that direction, but it's a condition which is necessary but not sufficient. So you need to have a good product to a certain scale. Of course, in the beginning, you can have a mediocre product, and eventually we fell apart with a lot of clients. But if you don't have the product, you won't grow. You need a good product, but it's not enough. You need to have the right storytelling of your product, of your brand, of yourself, which I think we have improved massively in that. But what I like, and I think one of the difference between the US investors that we have had and the European investors is the difference between being data-driven and more passive observing. So when we are data people in a way that in our approach is like investment approach, and it's based on data that we select, filter, study, and we take decisions. So we almost speak the same language of investors, which are data driven. So we can provide data. We show you what we mean by showing you the numbers and the processes and the single components of performance, and based on how do we generate alpha in the end. And I find that we click better with data-driven people. And so that's how I will put it.
It would have been easier to start with US as a geography first.
With data-driven, generically,
data-driven
investors, for sure. But I think a good manager should be able to deal with any type of investor and be able to adapt.
For sure.
It's not that we need to adapt to the investors and be ready and hire people that complement our data-driven approach to translating the data into a story and into something that is suitable for different type of allocators.
For sure.
This is on the to-do list.
Andrea, let me take, given that you're always the host, so you don't get to be asked questions interview style. So let me, for the benefit of the audience, like, being a young entrepreneur,
I used to be young.
Used to be young, still young.
Young.
Not still in the Forbes 20 under 20, these kind of things, which at times don't bring much luck. But basically, what would you be your suggestion to former self, so younger you that say, okay, not only I want to specialize in something like finance with a specific angle, but I want to create a company on the back of it, on the back of my own specialization and profession, almost in parallel, because it's not that you waited to be the completely recognized and go-to name of the industry before setting up a company. It was almost a parallel endeavor. So what would you suggest?
So that is a good question. And the suggestion, my experience was good. And I suggest that could be a good pattern in a way that, as you said, so what I did, I had exposure and experience to the industry up to the point working for second-tier in banks as a proprietary trader, asset management companies, and so on for a number of years. I got to the point to be wanted from the Tier 1 American banks and been offered jobs at those banks in very important roles. And this is when I decided to start this. So I felt that my talent was at its peak, and I had two ways in processing. Is either having a banking career where as you say, we become industry recognized, in my case, trader, credit trader, and from there develop your internship in entrepreneurial dream, which is a double-edged sword because you get trapped from a very high salary, from a very corporate type of mentality, and your brain gets trained into that. You will have a family, most likely you will be developing in a cost which was higher than definitely when I started Redhedge. And so I felt like it's a trap, and so you need to have a very strong motivation to do it at some point, and at some point you need to exit that trap. So I didn't go through that process. The temptation was not there. And my idea was, yes, you absolutely need some experience, because otherwise I don't appreciate, or I think it's a big gamble to start before to have any exposure. So you need to have exposure to the industry. At your peak, you should be picking it up. If it's your dream, it has to be your dream, because it's so tough. You like, it's as tough as you can think it is. We know.
And then some more.
People, and add more. So you need to love it and want it. It's going to be not economically rewarding. You don't have anything that this industry offers you in the beginning. So you need to want it more than anything else in the world. Otherwise, it's impossible. So if you have that, then you have to pick it up when you're at your peak. You technically should have the real economical benefit and bet everything in everything in terms of your career in this venture, in your venture, in this industry or in any industry, which is this is what we did. This is what I did, and of course paid, in my opinion. In terms of money, I may have made more money by staying in the industry itself. It's not about economic, but for me, it's just building something was my dream, and that's what we did. Again. I never appreciated the one-man show type of shops. I always think you need a core, decision-making, someone that's clear responsibility on something, and everything else you need to be finding good partners and complementary to you to take it to the next step and to the next step again. Of course, there is to be one leader, especially in our industry, for the process of investing, which is one thing. But everything else should be supported by good people. And this is what we try to do here. But in short, to conclude your answer, my suggestion is pick your... don't enter too much into a trap, get exposed to the industry, and then put 100% into this, into the A project when you're your peak. When everyone wants you, it's potentially the best moment to try.
To go your own way.
If you really want to. Or by never being exposed, after, when you have developed the content, when you have developed everything, start. But never, I see a lot of funds starting when people get spitted out from the banks, and so they may as well try. And a lot of times it doesn't work. Like they were made redundant into the bank, very high, so they have nothing to lose in a way that they have.
They're still safe economically.
Safe economically, and so of course they try. They will maybe have connection to seed these new ventures, and it may work, may not work. It's just very different from someone when they picks it up and do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's very and I've seen, competitors of ours, to mention one, Irene, Hamza, former Credit Suisse trader, massive growth in very limited amount of years. Became much bigger than we are right now, and he is the one that picked it up and decided to do something like this. Stories like those have in common this of willing to do something rather than be passive in doing something.
That makes a lot of sense. And some suggestion you can give to people starting their own entrepreneurial venture?
Don't do it. That is the suggestion. Stick with the corporate world and don't do it. First of all, we have one competitor less.
Exactly.
Just kidding. It's not about that.
It's a crowded space.
The only suggestion is pair up with good people. Don't do it by yourself, and find a good colleague, someone that because it's mentally difficult. And you have to be very strong mentally. One of the things is you need to have someone to share the pain with. I think is the key suggestion, I would say.
Completely. That's why I had a sort of variation of this suggestion, which is protect your health. Whatever you do, protect your health, because in the rush of the moment, you might take a lot of things as make it or break it, do or die sort of situation, which are really not. But you perceive as them, especially if you're younger, you tend to be more black and white about things. Whether maybe it's more difficult to realize that any game, it's a long-term game. Absolutely. If it has to generate a lot of value. So as time in the market often beats timing the market, like time in building entrepreneurial company beats getting crazy and putting your health too much on the line. A little bit, I think it's necessary, but too much of your health on the line. And find maybe the support figures where there is a dynamic in which stress as a sort of pressure, as an hydraulic system, needs to diffuse. And you have to have some safe switch where it diffuses like correctly. I'm joking in a way that we have now an operation set up in Milan. And one of the investments there, it's a boxing bag. I think it's one of the best investment ever, because people, if they ever have to take it out on something and not someone, they take it out on the boxing bag and not verbally on the colleague. Absolutely. Which is might sound trivial, but this can be at times a very high pressure job, especially from the training point of view. And the training room can become a boiler room at times. And I think it's very important to build valves, safety valves, where you can diffuse the pressure before it gets into an escalation mode, and as it can happen. I mean, you have the first experience about that, but I think it's another, let's say, characteristic to intrinsically build some safety measure that everything is diffused in the best way. And I also think culture is where protects a lot, because also I think people can come up to us and talk about anything. We have a very flat hierarchy. We don't really have a lot of middle management, which isolate us from any process we are involved in.
It's a good democracy where we decide everything.
Excellent. Exactly. At least we're informed about everything, like up to the line item. We're not afraid of getting our hands dirty with anything.
Absolutely. That is definitely key.
Even cleaning the desk. So that's a bit of the thing that also help. And one of, I won't say concern, but challenges maybe, is to keep the same while scaling, because obviously the more you scale, the more natural distance might
and time that you can allocate to each resources. That's exactly why I think our next challenge will be good middle management, which is key for grow, as I think it is crucial. I think our time is up for now. Definitely we should be getting everyone to know us a bit better, because I think it's useful in the end. And thank you for taking the time. And
absolutely, it was a true pleasure.
In a formal way. Of course, we mostly speak in Italian, so where we are between us, but we speak in English.
Likewise, knowing it's still there somehow.
Exactly. And see you to the next one.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.